Hey guys, welcome to the 14. I'm Nick Cole, and we're breaking down all the SEC football games in Week 10 from a betting perspective. Today, we're talking about the Auburn Tigers visiting the Texas A&M Aggies. This game's going to be played on Saturday at Kyle Field at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, which is 2:30 local time in College Station. This game's going to be broadcast on CBS. From a betting perspective, this game opened with Texas A&M as a 6-point favorite, and the lines moved slightly through the week as the Aggies are now favored by 4.5. The over-under opened at 52.5, and it has dropped to 49.5. I'm bringing our betting analyst, Christopher Smith. Christopher, this is probably the game of the week in the SEC. What do you think about both of these SEC West teams coming into this game?
Yeah, I'm looking at the national schedule right now, actually, and it's probably the game of the week, period. You have Ohio State, Nebraska at noon, and that's about it, honestly, this week. So I don't think Baylor TCU is going to do anything for me that much. So should be actually a great game. And if Auburn wins, it will basically solidify itself. The Iron Bowl will then determine the SEC West. But if Texas A&M wins, then A&M has a clear path to finish as the second best team in the West and probably the third best team in the SEC overall. But why don't you get into the weather and injuries and Nick's news and notes?
Sure. So let's start with the weather. We shouldn't have much issue on Saturday in College Station. We're looking at temperatures in the upper 60s for game time and no rain or significant wind in the forecast. So bet confidently. On the injury side of things, really nothing new here. We've on these shows throughout the season have sort of chronicled Texas A&M's issues, losing one of their quarterbacks, dealing with some injuries on the offensive line, but things have, they coming off a bye week and things have cleaned up a little bit for them, and no new significant injuries for Auburn. Obviously, last week getting back star linebacker Owen Popo is huge for them in that win over Ole Miss. On the news and notes front, let's start with, you kind of alluded to it a little bit there, but believe it or not, we're in week 10 of the SEC season, and Auburn still controls its own destiny in the SEC West. They're 6-2, and their only conference loss is against Georgia. So this game actually lines up as a critical piece of a team that might be trying to make a dark horse run into that SEC championship game. Obviously, got to beat A&M at A&M and win the Iron Bowl at the end of the season, which we know Alabama is also sitting on one loss, having lost to these same Aggies at Kyle Field. So if anything, they know a little bit about what Auburn's going to be going up against this week. So something to watch here as we get late into November. We start trying to forecast who we think will be in the title game. And I know a lot of people assume it's always going to be Georgia and Alabama, but there's still an outside chance for the Tigers here in Brian Harson's first year. Texas A&M is coming off of a bye week, and I would consider them rested and healed at this point, and maybe back to being sort of the team that we thought they would be in August when they were considered a top 5 team. And then one more thing I would point out in this series before I hand it over to you for the betting analysis is that we got a little bit of an oddity at Kyle Field for this game. We think about that as one of the most intimidating places for a team like Auburn, a road team, to come in and try to get a win. But the Aggies actually haven't beat Auburn at Kyle Field. Now, this is a relatively new series. I think they played 11 times, but will this be the year, Christopher, that Texas A&M finally gets the monkey off the back and beats Auburn at Kyle Field on Saturday?
I think there's a great chance of that. You mentioned at the top of this video that A&M is a 4.5-point favorite. So right off the bat, better than 50% shot implied odds there. But, we've talked a lot before, and I've talked a lot before separately on Bo Nix and his career at Auburn and how he has performed historically against the best defenses he's played and the best programs he's played. And I actually think Brian Harsin, Mike Bobo, and Bo Nix all deserve a lot of credit this year for the way he's played. And I think maybe some people don't recognize quite how well he's played because the receivers have been just awful for him this year. And the offensive line's been better than it was last year, but not spectacular. So even so, like, you can separate out the 5 Power 5 opponents that Auburn's faced. And you have LSU, Arkansas, and Ole Miss on the one hand, right? And their average SP plus rating on defense is 55th. Then on the other hand, you have Georgia first and Penn State 5th. So in that first group of sort of mediocre Power 5 defenses, Nix has completed 66% of his passes, 8.2 yards per attempt, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, and he's running for 5.8 yards per carry. Now, and against the other group, the Georgia and the Penn State, 56%, that's 10% worse, 5.4 yards per attempt, nearly 3 yards worse, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception, 0.8 yards per carry. That's 5 yards less per carry on the ground. So, I mean, that's a huge, huge difference in Bo Nix's numbers and Auburn's offense as a whole. And what do you know, Texas A&M ranks 5th in that same stat, or sorry, 7th, where Penn State's 5th, Georgia's 1st. So I think you're going to see a similar class in defense that Auburn's facing here. And even this year, they have not proven that Nix can have a good performance against this type of defense. So you also look at the spot, right? We said last week that Auburn off a bye at home last week against a tired Ole Miss team with a lot of injuries was a great spot for Auburn. But if you look at the game, Auburn only outgained Ole Miss by 19 yards. And the Rebels had 2 field goals in the red zone. They turned the ball over on downs twice more in the red zone. They had another turnover on downs in the second half, like near midfield. And then the game before that, Arkansas actually outgained Auburn by 33 yards and 9 first downs, but went 0 of 3 on 4th down. And Auburn got a non-offensive touchdown and 2 long passing touchdowns. So the final score in both of Auburn's last 2 games I think it's a little misleading. The games were a little closer than the final score would indicate. And Auburn is 3-1 against the spread in the last 4 on the basis of those last 2 games. So I think they're probably riding a little high in the market right now. And if you look on the other side, especially at the A&M offense, just listen to the last 5 games from Pro Football Focus. This is Pro Football Focus's grades for the Texas A&M offense in their last 5 outings in order: 54, 67, 75, 79, 79. There's a clear pattern there. And the pattern is they're getting a lot better. Calzada had not thrown any meaningful passes in a game or double-digit passes in a game since 2018 in high school until he was thrust into the game against Colorado. He's gotten a lot more comfortable. They've built the offense a lot more around him. But perhaps even more importantly than that, this offensive line that was they lost 4 starters last year. And I think their 1 returning starter has been hurt most of the year. So it's taken them a long time to sort of get the offensive line set, but that's improved. So you look at the trend for A&M, their offense is clearly getting better. And that's, running game, passing game, and that's helping everything to do with their program right now. So from a spot standpoint, definitely seems to be in favor of Texas A&M, kind of like it was last week for Auburn against Ole Miss. But yeah, who are you betting on this game and why?
Yeah, you kind of took the words right out of my mouth on why I'm going to take Texas A&M in this game. It feels like a very similar spot to Auburn last week against Ole Miss. You got a rested team at home that's playing better, had time to game plan for an SEC West opponent. So give me the Aggies -4.5. And then I look at the total on this game, and 49.5 seems like a fairly small number for these teams. But I'm gonna go under, and my reasoning is going to be maybe faulty logic. But I watched that Ole Miss Auburn game last week, and they barely got to that number. They got to 51 with a much more explosive Ole Miss offense, even with the injuries, and probably more importantly, a much more porous Ole Miss defense than the Tigers can expect to see from A&M this week. So I'm going to say under 49.5, and I'm going to take the Aggies. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I am going to be following you with Texas A&M -4.5 and under 49.5. I like -4.5 better here, and it's actually one of the bets that I'm personally making with my own money this week. But if you look at the under, since the bye week that Ole Miss had an early bye week, unders are 4-1 in Ole Miss games. And Texas A&M, Jimbo Fisher is an old school coach. He is more comfortable playing in those types of old school, defense first kind of run the ball games. So I'm not as confident here at the under, but the fact that you get the half point above 49 is also key. The number's been trending down all week. So if you're wanting to bet the under and this is moved to 49, I think that's probably a point where I would say try to stay away from it. But if you want to bet it and it's still 49.5, go for it there. But for Nick Cole, I'm Christopher Smith for the 14, and we'll talk to you next week.